Welcome to Pinoy Prop Smith, and today we're going to create a video which is a very remarkable weapon from Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Taskmaster Sword. So that's it. Here's the end product. But I will show you the process how I make these. So stick around. If this video reach for 1,000 likes, I'm going to create a tutorial video how I create this Taskmaster helmet. So yeah, as you can see, it's not 100% done because there's a few details I need to add here. But on the front, it's pretty much done already. And how it looks awesome, and how awesome it looks, even if you look at close. By the way, it's not 3D printed, it's handcrafted by EVA foam and a little bit of vinyl wrapping method here for the colors. Yeah, only if this video reached 1K likes or 1,000 likes, and I'm going to provide the video, the whole process, how I create this, along with the free pattern that I've used. So hope you made that. Let's get started for the sword making. Yeah. Here are the materials that you need. This aluminum rod, it's not actually a rod that is used on welding, but this is the rod that is used for antenna. So this will be the base of our sword, and the most common material that we're going to use is the EVA foam. These are letters. We have here pearl gray, which have this metallic texture, and then our very plain orange. It's a fox fur. So this is kind of manageable material that you can use, especially in weapons, and it's quite durable also. The good thing about this kind of materials is that if you're going to apply it on your weapons, it won't get any damage on compared from the paints, because if you have your paints done on your weapons, most likely if you're going to have a performance, there's a bigger chance that you will damage it. The great example that I use these materials is the one I previously created, which is this Taskmaster shield. As you can see, those texture here, not texture, but rather the coating here is from those materials, which is the gray and orange letters. So here, so shiny, right? And it's not gonna damage enough, even if you hit something with this one. I'd rather try hitting this. See, no dents. And last but not least, our main adhesives. First one is our contact cement. I know it looks like a bottle of ketchup, so don't be fooled. I just used this canister because it's really manageable to apply it for the edges of the EVA foam. If you're going to connect two different materials from its edges, and then we're going to create a new dimension for it, this is a really manageable tool, which is creating a canister for contact cement. Last, our contact adhesive. This is somehow not really important to use. It's just a backup or an additional material in case that we lack of adhesives, such as this contact cement here. But mainly it is a contact cement that we're going to use all throughout the video, and it's going to be minimal times that we're going to use this. And now we have here our Pepakura file for the Taskmaster Sword. I'll put the description where I found this file so that you can locate it by yourself as well. We're going to change the color output into white to save some ink. Now we have our printout. We're going to connect those pages. We have here our very common glue and we're going to connect those pages so that we can have our full pattern on its original size. So there is a 5mm margin when you print out the pattern, and you can take advantage of that to input your glue or to apply your glue on those sides and let it sit there until it dries. There we go, nice and clean. Now we have here our full length of the pattern. Next thing we're going to do about this is to cut out the shapes or the patterns itself on the printout. Just have a scissors in your household and cut out those pieces. Be careful in this step, because not just the safety of the pattern but for your safety as well. Alright, we have here the blade part and the handle, and we're going to leave a little bit of allowance here at the handle so that we can apply a glue on the allowance and connect it to our blade. So here is our main base of the sword. Next is we're going to use the aluminum rod that we have, and we're just going to measure it in the most right measurement we're going to use in the sword. Not too long, because there are some parts of the sword that we need to consider. Now that we decided how long the rod will be, we're going to cut it with our hacksaw. Be careful in this step because you may need to have a hard grip on it, and you might cut out your fingers, and we don't want that happen. Next is tracing out our patterns to the EVA foam. If you have a gel point pen that has light colors such as mine that I'm using here, which is silver, that will be great because it will emphasize the exact edges of the pattern. But if you don't have anything in your place, just like mine, you can use a normal ballpoint pen. That will do, or a pencil as well. Make sure that you can see those sketches of the pattern. So now we have our both sides of our pattern. We're going to trace the detail here, which is a little bit of hole in the handle part. You may trace it both of them. Now we have here the hand guard. Just going to use one of the patterns of the hand guard. Cut out carefully from those edges, and we're going to trace it. So that is how it should be for the purpose of the hand guard. We're going to trace the pattern. We're just going to flip over to the opposite side of this piece. Using with our same pen, we will trace out the edges of the hand guard. There we go. We have our two pieces of the hand guard. Now we're going to cut out those pieces with our very sharp blade. I have here a whetstone on my end here, which I use to sharpen my blade as well. Make sure that you have your blade sharp as possible so that we will have a clean cut for those edges. We don't want to have rough edges because that would look messy for our sword. Carefully cut for the edges. Make sure you don't miss the patterns that we just traced out. Now we have cut out one of the sides. And that will be the same thing that we're going to do for the other side as well. Next is to cut out the detail on the handle, which is a hole, and tracing out the rod to our blade piece. We're planning out where the rod will be in this blade, and I figured out that it would be good if we're going to place it at the center of the blade. Trace out the blade and make a V cut on the traced rod shape in there. Once you cut out the one side of it, you're going to do the same thing at the opposite side, and you will be able to peel off the EVA foam at the center. This is where our rod will place, nice and smooth, so that the shape of the blade won't be compromised, and it will have its own space inside of the blade as a foundation. Now we're going to apply the contact cement to construct our main base of the sword. Simply just apply the contact cement in each side. Spread out the contact cement. Make sure all of the surface of our sword patterns has this contact cement that we're applying. Next is the other side. Also, for our rod, we're going to apply some of it too. And let's place the rod in the sword patterns. Make sure you carefully apply those, because once you connect the pieces, it will be hard to disconnect them. Make sure the edges are even. And voila, we have our base of the sword. Make sure your pressure hard press for the both sides. Now for the edges, as you notice on the reference of our sword, Taskmaster Sword has one edge, one blade edge. So we're going to just bevel the edge, one single edge of the sword. Carefully cut the corner. Make sure that the blade's edge is even as well. Don't worry on the those inevitable errors when you're going to have a bevel cut there, because we will make it smooth with our rotary tool later on. Now this is how the sword should look like. Now we're going to use our rotary tool. Just carefully apply the tool to straight up our bevel cuts in the blade. I used the grinder drum for our blade. Bloop, 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 bloop. This is what it should look like after you have grind them. That went wrong. Now we need to close up the pores and the scratches that we made coming from our router tool using heat. And I have here my heat gun to have this nice smooth surface of our sword. As you can see, there's no trails of scratches here we've left behind in our blade. Now to our first coat, we're going to trace out the length and the width of our blade. So the current color I'm using right now for this letter is the orange. So using our meter stick here, we're going to connect the measurements of dots that we have traced. Next is we're going to apply our contact cement to our synthetic leather, making sure that all of its surface has a contact cement. Next is applying contact cement as well in our blade. Same thing, make sure that all of the surface of the blade has the contact cement. Now we're going to cut out the synthetic leather along with the measurements that we had before. I use my cutter here, my sharp blade, just to have this sharp edge of those leather. We carefully apply the leather from the beveled edge, because that is where it's supposed to sit to in the blade. This is the hard part of it. I have kind of a struggle here because the bent part of the sword is giving me a hard time how to apply this synthetic leather, but luckily I still put it off. There we go. This is how it should look like. Next, we have here our pearl gray leather, synthetic leather. First is we're going to trace out the shape of our handle using our normal ballpoint pen. Trace out the measurements and also the sides, and we're going to create a seam or an outer seam outside of the pattern we just made from the handle part. This is for the edges of the blade. So since that we made the hole on the pattern or with our main base of the sword, we're going to make a hole as well for this cover. Carefully cut out the hole, and that will be the same thing that we're going to do for the opposite side. For the seams, there are spaces that I created because that would affect corners of the blade, since it has some corners there. But once you made them, it should sit right to our handle sword. Now we're going to apply the contact cement as well for the pattern that we just cut out from our gray synthetic leather. Same thing that will happen as well for the opposite side of the sword, opposite side of the leather, I'm sorry. There we go. And lastly, to the handle of the sword as well. make sure that it is evenly applied to all of the surface of the sword. Same thing to the other side as well. There we go. Carefully apply the synthetic letter of our gray color in the handle, making sure it's even. This is the help. This is what happens for the help of those seams that we just created. Make sure you hard press. If you notice some excess, just simply cut it out. Make sure it's inside. There we go. The same thing for the opposite side. So this is the sword looks like. Now for the detail of the blade, we're going to use some printed detail here. And cut it out with our gray letter as well to shape out. You can also trace the detail as well that we made in the blade itself to decide where it should be when we applied it. So I made 4 pieces or 5 pieces additionally from the pattern that we just created. So this is the hard part. We're going to cut the traced part that I have written there, and we carefully peeled out the orange synthetic letter that is attached to the blade. Same thing that you're going to do on the opposite side as well. Now we're going to apply the contact cement on that side. Even though we had applied it before, it is best to make sure that there is still a contact cement on those sides as well, so that it will connect strongly for the new patterns that we just created, and it will look nice as well. This is also for the durability of those details, so that it won't be removed from your sword as well. One by one, you're going to apply the contact cement for those details you just created, and carefully connect it to your sword. The reason why I decided to cut it out and not to glue it on top of it is because the strong feature of the connectivity when you applied it into the EVA foam to your letter. If you're going to connect the letter on top of its smooth surface of another letter, it will easily come off, and it might damage your sword. Now we're going to focus on our handguard. Since we are done with our blade, just simply cut out the trace pattern we created earlier. Using our sharp knife, carefully cut out those edges, nice and clean, as you can see. Now we have our edges here. So now we have our hand guards for both sides of the sword. We're going to create another one for the middle because the sword's width is very thick due to the base that we just created. So what I did here is that I create a slight cut and bevel it on the middle of it. I cut the lines to be traced on those handguards, not throughout the opposite side, because we're going to cut the middle part with a bevel cut there. It's quite difficult because you might be accidentally cut off your finger, so be careful. Just to reduce the thickness of this handguard here. I admit having a hard time doing this. So this is how it should look like, and same thing that you're going to do on the other side as well. To the third pattern that we just made, we're going to cut out those edge all throughout for it, because this will be somehow would make up the thickness for the blade itself when we apply those handguards. There we go. That's how it should look like. Next is we're going to use our contact cement for those parts that we just cut out for our hand guard. First is those parts that has this beveled middle part, and lastly for our little thingies here, going to apply those parts as well, both sides. There. Oops. There we go. Same thing with the other side as well. Now we're going to connect the parts that we just applied with contact cement to complete our hand guard. There we go, we carefully apply those. This is how it should look like. There. What a nice hand guard we have. Now we're going to have the coat for our hand guard as well. So, same thing. We're going to trace the hand guard. Add some seams on these edges and cut it out, and you will make another one for the other side. Apply some contact cement on our hand guard itself, roughly on its surfaces, even on the other side. Oh, not to mention, I also created some circles here. At first, I didn't plan to have some emblems of the sword, but later on, I think it would be nice to have some emblems as well. This is just some additionals. It is a letter that would fit for those two circles that would just additionally add up. Now for those pieces, we're going to now apply the hand guard's cover, the gray letter. Carefully apply, because it will be hard to peel it off when you successfully hard press those surfaces, making sure the edges is even. If you see some excess for some edges that is not really necessary, you can just cut it out simply. So we have here our one side, and it is the same thing that we're going to do for the other. Now we have our handguard piece complete. We're going to carefully attach it to our sword. So due to our details that we just created in the blade, you might be having a hard time inserting the handguard, but it should be reached to our desired location in the blade. There we go. Nice and clean. So shiny. Next is our emblems. So just two circles that we just created, we're going to connect it to the gray letter that we just applied some contact cement on. Cut out the X's until we create a circle shape. We have 1 and 2. I draw some manual patterns there because this is how it looks like in the reference, the Taskmaster symbol. I believe it has the same symbol as well on the shield. Now we're going to add a contact cement on the surface of the letter because we're going to apply the orange cutouts for our details for the emblem of Taskmaster. There we go. You carefully apply the contact cement on those little thingies and connect it on those circle figures to make a Taskmaster emblem. Same thing that you're going to do on the second piece. There. So these are the two pieces that I made out. Next is you're going to add a contact cement as well, once again, in the middle of the handguard and also in the back part of our emblems. And this is how the sword should look like. There are some additional details that I added, but it is the same step that I have done earlier on the orange blade part, where I peeled off those pieces after I cut it out. So may I present to you the Taskmaster Sword. And here is our sword. As you can see from the previous clips, I haven't included some steps such as these stripes here, or some cutouts from the handle. It is somehow similar from the steps that I have done in these parts, which I just manually cut those shapes and peeled off the cover that we have used. Overall, I think I didn't miss some important parts that you need to know, since that the whole base is created on those clips. So this is the Taskmaster Sword. Yeah, as you can see, it has a nice grip. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next crafts. And remember, be creative, patient, and resourceful, because that's how Pinoy Propsmith does it. See you in our next video.